about reflection, developing business plan, and so the key issues here we discussed for the component is under component 7, profitability for wealth creation is in terms of gender sensitive market access is very important because it tends to be like the reason for going through all the other components. So at the end, you should be able to make some kind of profit by taking note of the other wealth creation forms that you need to create. And then component 7 could also adapt the 7 friends or questions as guiding questions in terms of reflection, which connects to component 1, like who do you produce for, why the product, what kind of product, in terms of doing a collective reflection of the entire exercise, taking note of the past and the present condition throughout all these questions. And then the component 7 also proves the value chain stages, because at the end of all the stages, it's 7, if you are able to create wealth, if you are able to create profitability, then it means that you have proved the concept that you want to explore, you have put it into actual implementation, and like other presenters said, you have explored other opportunities, other potentials within the area that you are working on. And then on the interplay, we try to look at the connection between all the other components, and we realize that it has come up. Gender is a cross-cutting issue, though in some of the components is silent. But if we say we are using a gender-sensitive methodology, then it means that gender should come out in all the analysis that we are making, like we see in 4, 1, and other components. And then subcomponent 3 under 7 connects with all other components, like reflection, continual reflection of the work you do. It means that in any other component or tool that you are using, reflection should be something that you must necessarily do when it comes to implementation of the tool. And then profitability means both multiple forms of wealth, because if your focus is just profit in the normal business arena that we have today, you will be missing some form of other important resources. So there is the need for us to define profitability in terms of the gender-sensitive methodology that we are trying to use.
Then we try to make a step back and to see on the global picture, on the broader picture of this exercise. And we try to define some guiding principles that could help also in introduction to and also in conclusion of the work to resume and to take back some general principles that are really important. The first one is access to market must be transformative. Transformative means how ActionAid wants to change, to promote the policy change. And because we said yesterday, to choose access to market means that we find an opportunity. Otherwise, we can do everything else. Okay, but if you choose to be market-oriented, means that you see market opportunity for your transformative work. Otherwise, it is just business lenses. Out ActionAid, I don't think. The second point is we identify the policy analysis not clearly evident in the framework. It's in the framework because if you work properly on gaps and bottlenecks, you find the policy is. But even because we think that this handbook will not just in the hands of ActionAiders, it's better to, a little bit make it evident. It's just an exercise or refrain some word or whatever. Then the third element is what we also learned from your feedback in the other component, maybe in particular in the component 5, it's about time constraints. Okay, we know that we can go through all the exercise, all the elements, whatever, but I think to reduce this risk is important to have a clear analysis of which is the context where we are working on. And it can help in order to optimize the time and also to identify the most effective exercise that we have to do. Fourth general principle in this case is that value proposition should be business oriented but development based. So to be careful, it has not to be business-based and development-oriented. Otherwise, it's a private partnership exercise. And last, what is missing, and we think it's important, is to explain better the different kind of market we face. Because different kind of markets means different kind of strategy. Institutional market, you can, I mean, based on institutional market, you can do a certain value proposition. Based on export-oriented market, you can do another value proposition. So it's important in the handbook, maybe this could be also something in the suggestion to explain better which kind of market we related on.
We also had a discussion on social marketing, which I think is more relevant to our sector actually. So that needs to be integrated into the entire understanding of market.
So please write that down and put it over here so we don't lose it.
And this also came up in Sonita's case study, where they tried to look at the local market, the other marketing opportunities, to be able to design strategies to fit into the specific model.
Excellent.
Just one point, when we are dealing with overall sustainable agriculture model and combining our rights-based approach to that, it has become a little bit easier because the sustainable agriculture itself is an alternative. Whereas when we are getting into markets, they are not alternatives. It's a mainstream, and we are getting into with our own a lot of limitations actually. So how do we understand that the entire market and our interventions? So that needs to be a little bit of a reflection somewhere.
And the general conclusion on this was the fact that we are all from different contexts, and our challenges or issues are different. Like Muzu said, you need to be very conversant with the tool, if not you become confused at a point. So we need to rethink of, as trainers or whoever, how do I, in my own way, summarize this framework to perfectly work with those I'm going to work with, not necessarily going through few components or all the components, but how do I summarize it to be a master of the framework.
Just one point, which we had not discussed, but just one point is we have, see, all these components are discussed across the module in different locations scattered. So producers' rights were talked about somewhere, and then social, environmental impacts were talked about somewhere, and then the other important concerns, gender or whatever, and then transformative markets were also talked about, and then only producers are losing and everybody else is getting profits. So these are somewhere, I think if you look around, if they are kept in one place in a framework, I think that provides a very clearer picture which provides the background for our entire sector actually.
So if I want to make sure I'm understanding you, so is what you're saying that you think it would be useful to say kind of the reason we're doing this is to transform from this to that. So from a situation in which producers are getting the short end of the stick, so to speak, when they're being exploited, to a situation where they're not being exploited. That's kind of the transformation. Is that?
A win-win situation.
Yeah, and I think what you was also saying, sort of, I guess, from an action aids perspective, we're trying to, we understand and critique the mainstream. So in the case of CRSA, it's the industrial agriculture model, and then we combined scientific approaches, agroecology, with our human rights-based approach to create CRSA. So this methodology is very similar. We don't like the mainstream markets. What's the critique of them? Because, as you're saying, producers are getting exploited, environment, blah, blah, blah. And then this is a construct of trying to create an alternative framing, but what you also said, we're still engaging in the mainstream markets. So as a sector, there's also discussions on alternative markets, and which is where the value proposition really comes in. And in Rome at the CFS, what we're trying to do right now is really document those markets. Very little is understood. There's a lot written about mainstream supply chains, and governments and donors really support those. There's very little written about alternative markets, which is what at the moment NGOs and governments are trying to document for the agriculture sector and make them visible.
I hear that, and I would just put a caution there. Would you consider the buyers you met with in Bagan to be alternative markets? Or are they mainstream markets with shared values?
I think mainstream with shared values.
Okay, so my caution is be careful, because there may be, there are, I would tell you, not just there may be, there are many people playing in the mainstream who could be very effective partners. So if all you do is focus on the alternative markets, I don't think you're doing yourselves any favors.
Sure.
That's the
We need
point.
to look for
Yes.
broad picture.
Yeah.
Look for.
Yes. But I think framing is that's a great point. So thank you very much. We have about 3 more minutes before we need to break for tea. And so what I want to ask is, we asked these people specifically to listen for interconnections between the components, but many of you may be seeing or thinking about interconnections. So is there anyone else who would like to share an insight you have about the interconnections between the 7 components?
Yes, I think what is the actually major dilemma in the whole process? How you go for a value proposition? Because in terms of value proposition, maybe on the one hand you get the opportunity, on the other hand also it will limit your scope. So in terms of value proposition, we have to think of seriously, and we have to analyze the existing market opportunity. Without that, if we go for a certain value proposition, actually it will also limit my scope for other market.
Again, in the market access through relationship building, when we go through the all components, we can see another components about the gaps, about the challenge, about the power dynamics related with gender as well as. Just talk about the governance of the value chain overall, because there are different actors or partners with different level of power. So we need to consider the power analysis aspect as well, and we need to be conscious while building relationship as well, because we in the relationship building part, in the partnership building part, if we don't take the whole components into consideration, we may miss the power dynamics aspect. They all are linked, they all consider